What do you do when there's no one left? Hi, Nancy Beauvair here with Agape and NEXsteps. Not that long ago, I did an article and a video that had to do with what happens when you're living solo and who do you name, how do you take care of your estate planning in that case. In that instance, that was referring to people who were either widowed or divorced or never married, but those people all had some surviving family member, some relative, some friend that they would have named as executor. But what happens if you have no one? This was something that really I hadn't considered, but I got a call recently from a man who reached out to me because he doesn't have anybody left living who he can trust to be the executor on his estate. He wants to make sure that he's done the responsible thing and taken care of his estate planning. He has absolutely no living relatives left, and all of his friends he's either outlived or they've lost the cognitive ability to manage an estate. So what do you do when something like that happens? Just to remind you about the importance of having an executor. The role of an executor is to administer your estate after you pass away and take care of things following the outline of your will. Now, if you don't have a will, just to remind you, that is known as dying intestate. In that case, whether you've actually created a will and named an executor or not, your estate will be administered. Nobody gets away without having the estate administered, because if you do die intestate, the province will take over. And the province, of course, is a big bureaucratic entity that doesn't know you, doesn't know your wishes, and doesn't know really what you would have liked to have done. So ideally, you always want to make sure that you name an executor who you know, who you trust to make the decisions as you've outlined in your will according to your instructions. So let's get back to the issue of the gentleman who called me. He has nobody left. What do you do in that case? Well, there are options that are available. There are trust companies that will administer your estate on your behalf. However, they typically will not accept your estate unless your estate is worth at least $1 million. I recently saw a video that talked about the average estate in Canada, and at the time of that video being recorded, the average estate in Canada was $625,000. That's well under that $1 million threshold. So there's a whole lot of people in that place where they cannot get a trust company to act as executor and administer their estate. Well, there's also professionals like lawyers. But often, again, lawyers aren't usually in the business of administering your estate. They're in the business of creating your legal documents and making sure that things are followed. But they typically are dealing with the legal entities, and they typically don't have the resources or the time to actually do the estate administration. After all, administering an estate from the time that the individual dies until you're able to close the estate is taking anywhere from a year to 18 months in the most simple estates these days. There's so much that needs to be done, and it can get bottlenecked and held up at any step along the road. So then what are your options? Well, there are professionals who will step up and act as executor on your behalf. This is an area that I'm now participating in, simply because it occurred to me that this gentleman is not alone. There are going to be a lot of people, especially as we age, who are outliving their spouses, outliving their friends, and maybe never had children, are estranged from their family. What if you have family but you're estranged from them? There are so many people that will be left without anybody that will help them gain peace of mind when they're doing their estate planning because they need somebody to step up as executor. Now, a lot of times people are hesitant to be executor because it is a fiduciary role, and as such, there is a liability component attached to it. Beneficiaries can make a challenge against the executor if they feel that there have been mistakes made or if the estate hasn't been administered appropriately. So that will often scare a lot of people off taking on that role. And aside from that, it's also something, as I mentioned before, it's something that is very time consuming, needs a lot of attention to detail, a lot of record keeping, and quite frankly, takes a lot of time over a long period of time until you can actually close the estate. So if you're watching this video and you are one of these people who don't have anybody to be executor, reach out and I'll see if I can help you. If I can't, I'll see if I can direct you to somebody who can give you guidance. If you know of somebody who needs somebody to step up as executor, please pass on the video. I'd like you to go over and check out the article. It goes into more detail about this process and what is required. The unfortunate thing is that people postpone doing their estate planning at the best of times. And if you're overwhelmed because you don't know who to name, then that can create you ending up without creating an estate plan or even a basic will. And without a will, the government takes over. So keep control, maintain your own control over your own choices, create that will, find an executor, reach out. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to sharing more with you again next week. Bye for now.